If you think you understand the Book of Revelation, you're probably reading the action movie version, not the real one. And then comes the warning label, delivered almost casually, and yes, this is going to get confusing fast. Revelation is introduced quickly and without ceremony, the most misunderstood book in the entire Bible, packed with metaphors, absolutely not linear, and famously strange if you approach it the wrong way. Trying to read it literally is like trying to understand a movie by only watching the trailer. Loud, dramatic, and full of explosions, but offering zero context. Most people treat Revelation as if it were a step-by-step manual for the end of the world. But the book wasn't written for curious spectators centuries later. It was written for a community under pressure, people who were persecuted and who needed their messages wrapped in symbolism just to stay safe. And that's where the humor slides in, flat and dry. It's not a spoiler about the end of the world, it's a coded letter with layers on top of layers. The narrator keeps the pace fast. Modern readers look at beasts, dragons, falling stars, and immediately imagine CGI and disaster movies. But the original audience saw something completely different. They understood the symbolism instantly. They lived inside that language. Political tension, spiritual conflict, coded imagery. It all fit their world perfectly. Revelation wasn't designed to be a mystery box. It wasn't predicting technology, global catastrophes, or countdown clocks. It was speaking the only way it could speak in a time when honesty was dangerous and metaphors were safer than facts. Still, the narrator points out the problem. People today read the book like it's a literal survival guide, when the original readers saw it as a message of reassurance, a reminder that chaos wouldn't win forever, a spark of hope hidden inside heavy imagery. And just when it feels like Revelation might finally make sense, the narrator adds one last line, quiet, simple, and unsettling in the best way. And things only get more complicated when you discover who the original audience actually was. The Book of Revelation was written for people who were suffering, not to predict dates. The narrator drops the line without drama, as if explaining why someone brought an umbrella on a sunny day. It sets the direction instantly. This book was never meant to function like a countdown clock. The scene shifts to the central situation, presented quickly and clearly. Revelation came out of a world shaped by political persecution. People weren't worried about figuring out the future. They were worried about surviving the present. Because of that, the entire narrative is coded. Every image, every symbol, every strange creature is doing double duty, one meaning for outsiders, a completely different meaning for the people who actually needed the message. The metaphors weren't made to confuse, they were made to protect. They used strong images because hope had to be disguised as something dramatic enough to slip past the authorities. The narrator compares it to something perfectly modern. It's like sending hidden messages inside metaphors so you don't get censored. It's simple, it's relatable, and it immediately explains why Revelation operates in layers. You don't send plain text when plain text gets you in trouble. As the episode moves forward, the dry humor kicks in. The narrator lists the dramatic elements with the tone of someone reading a grocery list. Dragons, beasts, trumpets. And then the punchline lands, not CGI, metaphors. No build-up, no emotion. Just the comedic sting of stating the obvious. From there, the episode returns to the key point. Reading Revelation literally leads straight to chaos. A person who approaches the book like a movie script ends up drowning in details that were never meant to be taken at face value. But reading it symbolically, like the original audience, turns the whole thing into a clear message. Not simple, but clear. Hope coded in imagery, encouragement wrapped in symbolism, a reminder that the powerful don't stay powerful forever. The narrator explains it in fast, modern language. Literal reading equals confusion, fear, charts, predictions, and spreadsheets that never work. Symbolic reading equals context, meaning, and an actually understandable message. It's almost unfair how different those two approaches can be. And just when the viewer starts adjusting to this new perspective, the narrator drops the final micro hook, clean and quiet, the kind that sits in the air for a second. And that completely changes the way you understand the book. No cliffhanger tone, no suspense music. Just a simple fact hinting that everything so far was only the first layer. And the symbols waiting in the next chapter are about to make the whole thing even stranger. The symbols are not monsters. They're political, spiritual, and social messages. The narrator launches the chapter with this explosive line, like someone kicking open a door just to show there was nothing scary behind it. And with that, the episode finally steps into the territory where most readers get completely lost. The world of symbolism inside the Book of Revelation. The narrator moves straight into the central breakdown. The beast isn't a creature from a fantasy movie. It represents an oppressive power. The dragon doesn't belong in a monster franchise. It symbolizes evil embedded into systems and structures. The stars aren't glowing objects falling from space. They represent leaders. And the trumpets. They're not sound effects from an apocalyptic soundtrack. They're announcements of change, signals that something significant is shifting. To make it clearer, the narrator brings in a modern comparison that lands instantly. It's the ancient equivalent of using memes to criticize the government. Suddenly, everything fits. Strong imagery, indirect messaging, layers of meaning disguised as dramatic visuals, all to communicate without getting silenced. The humor arrives in the form of quiet observation. The narrator describes what happens when someone today reads the book literally. They picture monsters, explosions, and a full-budget film adaptation. Meanwhile, the original audience understood everything instantly. They didn't need a decoder. They didn't stop to ask, wait, is the dragon supposed to be an actual dragon? They lived in a symbolic world. For them, these images were as obvious as modern emojis. The narrator highlights the critical point with calm precision. The book isn't predicting technology. It's not forecasting meteor showers wiping out the planet. It doesn't mention robots, satellites, or futuristic weapons. Instead, it predicts something far more familiar: human conflict, moral battles, and the tension between power and integrity. The kind of problems that don't expire, because people never stop being people. Modern readers get thrown off because the imagery feels so dramatic. But the moment someone stops trying to interpret it like a sci-fi script, everything becomes clearer. The symbols weren't meant to terrify, they were meant to reveal, and sometimes reveal in ways that required courage to understand. The narrator keeps the pace sharp and modern, with no space for academic weight. Symbols explained, misconceptions dismantled, and the meaning pulled out from underneath centuries of literal misreads. And then comes the final line of the chapter, quiet but decisive, the kind of micro-hook that pulls the viewer directly into the next act. And the real turning point arrives when you understand the true purpose of Revelation. The book looks violent, but the message is resistance. The narrator opens with this straightforward line, cutting through the dramatic reputation that surrounds the Book of Revelation. No flames, no thunder, no giant creatures stomping across the screen. Just the reminder that appearances don't always match intention. The scene shifts to the core of the idea. The victory of good was always the destination of the narrative. Justice for the oppressed, renewal for the exhausted, restoration for a world that felt like it was falling apart. Every intense image in the book exists to push back against despair, not to increase it. The original readers weren't expecting doom. They were looking for reassurance wrapped in dramatic packaging. The narrator drops a modern comparison to make everything click. It's like a letter saying, "Hold on, chaos doesn't win." It's the ancient equivalent of texting someone at 2 a.m. just to calm them down. A quick message disguised in bold imagery. The first-century audience didn't see destruction. They saw coded encouragement. Then the humor enters with dry efficiency. Instead of spoilers about the end of the world, the book delivers coded motivation. Instead of countdowns, it offers metaphors of survival. The narrator lists the dramatic elements: beasts, bowls, trumpets, and then adds, with absolute flatness, a secret manual of hope. No emotion, no emphasis, just the comedy of treating something profound as if it were an instruction slip taped to a box. The central irony follows naturally. Everyone today thinks Revelation is terror, darkness, doom, explosions, panic. Entire movie franchises owe their existence to the dramatic misunderstandings of its imagery. But the book wasn't written to scare people. It was written to calm a community already terrified. It wasn't feeding fear, it was interrupting it. Then comes the curiosity that flips everything. Apocalypse means revelation, not destruction. A simple definition that quietly demolishes centuries of dramatic interpretations. The book isn't announcing the end, it's exposing what was hidden. Revealing, not ruining. Clarifying, not collapsing. Once that sinks in, the entire tone of the book shifts. The narrator keeps the pacing sharp and modern, brushing away the heavy interpretations and revealing something surprisingly grounded. The message of hope was always meant to outshine the imagery of chaos. The symbols may look intense, but the purpose behind them is steady, calm and unmistakably focused on survival, not spectacle. And then, as the chapter closes, the narrator delivers the final micro-hook. Light, simple, and designed to pull the viewer directly into the last act. And that leads us to the most important point. Revelation isn't what you were told, it's a revelation about hope in times of crisis. The narrator opens with this strong line, answering the title directly and wiping away every action movie interpretation glued to the book of Revelation. No doom, no countdown, just a message meant for people who needed courage more than predictions. The recap arrives fast and clean. The book is not literal, it's not a forecast, it's not terror. It's a message for oppressed people, wrapped in symbols to protect the readers who couldn't speak freely. The narrator delivers each point, like someone checking boxes on a simple list, removing decades of confusion with the same energy one uses to clear clutter from a drawer. Then the script moves into the present, showing how the message still lands today. When everything feels like it's falling apart, the message stays the same. This is not the end. No drama, no emotional flourish, just the kind of statement people tend to forget exactly when they need it the most. A final modern comparison ties everything together. It's like discovering the movie you thought was about destruction was actually about survival. The narrator says it casually, but it flips the entire perspective. What looked like chaos was always leading somewhere. What seemed like doom was actually resilience in disguise. From here, the reflection becomes light and observational. Revelation never wanted to scare anyone. It wasn't designed to paralyze or push people into panic. It wanted to reveal what sits behind the chaos, the part hidden under fear, pressure, and noise. It wanted to strengthen people who had every reason to feel weak. It offered endurance wrapped in imagery, courage disguised as symbolism. The narrator keeps the pace fast, modern, and clean. No long explanations, no heavy tone. Just a reminder that the central idea was never destruction. It was clarity. The book doesn't ask people to run, it asks them to look deeper. It doesn't say prepare for the end, it says don't confuse the storm for the destination. Then comes the closing line, sharp and memorable, the kind that rings louder precisely because it's delivered quietly. The story doesn't show the end, it shows that the end doesn't get the last word. And with the same calm tone, the narrator ends with a natural CTA, not pushy, not dramatic. Just a simple invitation for what comes next. Which passage do you want explained next? Daniel, Ezekiel, or the letters to the 7 churches?